Hey guys, welcome to another episode of AP Human Geography Unit 1. Yay! Everybody's favorite. Today we're talking about 1.6, which is scales of analysis. So we're going to be looking at the different scales of maps that we look at and kind of help explain those a little bit and kind of take a brief glimpse into how changing scales can change the data and kind of what we can understand from it. So you should be able to define scales of analysis used by geographers, and the scale of analysis is just the territorial extent of what you're looking at. So when I always say, whenever we're looking at a map in class or online, or I'm sharing a map with you guys, I'm always going to be like, what's the scale? That's the first thing we're always going to do. And that's going to be global scale or regional scale or one of those. And we'll talk about them right now. So, so you should be able to define scales analysis used by geographers. Sometimes the local, national, or global scales seem discrete because we bound them politically. However, there are distinctions in the map. And don't let the side kind of throw you. This is more of a talent than it is something you need to memorize. So let's go ahead and get started looking at those. So the first one we're going to look at is global. Remember, small scale means we're looking at a ton of data. So global is the smallest scale map we'll look at, and every map from there gets larger and larger in scale. So this is a global map of religion. So the scale here is global. We're looking at the entire globe. And then from this, we start doing analysis. What can we understand? We can understand that Islam is predominantly Southwest Asia and North Africa. We understand that the Christianity religions are primarily Western Europe and North and South America. Now we can start understanding these even more, that a majority of Central and South America is predominantly Catholic. So these things just give us some input. So let's take a look at, just for a second, kind of look at the United States over here. We see that the United States is predominantly Protestant and some areas are Catholic, particularly along the southern border regions. And let's just leave it at that, and we'll come back to this at a different scale later. Here's another global scale. This is wealth. So GDP, gross domestic product per capita. So how much money a country is worth or makes per person in that country. We can see predominantly northern hemisphere countries are wealthier than southern hemisphere countries. And there's a lot of reasons why we can get into later. But once again, let's look at the United States here. The United States, on average, somewhere between 50 and 75,000 GDP per capita. Let's keep that number in our head because we're going to come back to it at a different scale later again. So those were global scales. We were looking at the entire globe. Now we're going to move on to a regional scale. And a region is any area that can be grouped together based on common characteristics. So here is North America. So you're seeing United States and Canada. And here that we're seeing is predominantly Protestant, some Catholic regions, the Mormon area in Utah, and that's it. This is a regional map. Here is regional GDP per capita. So if we look, remember we're talking about the United States on average, I think was, if we go back a couple maps, 50 to 75,000. It's kind of the United States color here. If we match this color to our key, 50 to 75,000. Let's go ahead of these maps. And we're seeing a wide range here. Anywhere from some states as low as 30 to 35,000 per capita, and some states upwards 50 plus, 50 plus, 50 plus, 45 to 50. So it changes kind of how we're looking at it. Let's start changing our scale again. National scale is where you're looking at just one single state. Now, do not confuse the term state with what we think of as a state. California, when it comes to kind of human geography and geography in general, California is not a state. We are a sub-state region. The state is the United States. So if you're confused about this, ask me on a video lecture or on a video meeting, and I'll explain the reasons why we call states and what it really is. But like the United States is a state, Mexico is a state, Canada is a state, France is a state. So those are states. What we call like California and Arizona, New Mexico, those are sub-state regions. So here, if we look at the United States, we thought that the predominant church body was Protestant. However, when we're looking at a national scale, we'll see that Protestant is heavy through the South with the Baptist and the Lutherans up north. But a majority of the United States, actually, the predominant religion there is Catholic. So the changing of scale changes the data. It doesn't mean that other data was inaccurate. It just means it was accurate at that scale. And that's always what we need to remember. That whatever scale we're looking at, that data is only accurate for that scale. The minute you change scale, you're changing the data and you can't do the same assumptions anymore. So we talked originally the United States was between 40 and 55,000 GDP per capita. This is another one, GDP per capita. This is at a national scale. We look at California. It looks like California is sitting about 55 to 60,000 per capita. So let's actually zoom in to a local level, which is a sub-state, and this is your median household income. Not exactly the same comparison, but we can get pretty close. So we looked before that California was 50 to 60 or 55 to 60. Then we start looking at California and we see that we have some counties, dark red, Imperial, and up in Northern California that are under 40,000. So by changing scale, we're getting a better representation, but it doesn't make any other data inaccurate. And I hope that makes sense. So scale of analysis is always about, one, identifying what scale we're looking at. National, which is just one country. A region, which is a group of countries or an area. And then beyond that, we have local, which is a sub-state map. So anything inside of a country or a state becomes sub-state. I hope that makes sense. So, and understand that the data at the various levels can reveal different information. It doesn't mean that data is wrong on the other scales. It just means we're getting a different picture of it. I hope that really makes sense. If not, please ask questions because I can help clarify this. But the main goal of this one is that you understand global, regional, national, and then sub-state or sub-national scale. And then from there, that you understand that that data does not translate from scale to scale. Theoretically, it doesn't work that way. That is the main learnings that you guys should get from this section. I hope that makes sense. If not, ask questions because I want to help clarify this and we understand it. That is it for 1.6, and we are almost done. There's only one more section for Unit 1, so be ready for that video too.